Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, the biggest pro cycling contract the world has ever seen, a look back at the incredible career of Mark Cavendish as he officially retires, and a wrap up of the latest contract news, including a rider who won a stage of the Tour de France this year who's switching teams mid-contract. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that Mark Cavendish's professional cycling career has officially ended. He won his final race, the Singapore Criterium, yesterday. Yes, the race was fixed. Also, yes, Mark Cavendish deserved to go out like that. More on Cavendish later on in this show. We also learnt that Steve Cummings is leaving Ineos Grenadiers, but that they've also got a development team lined up for 2025. A partnership with Team Lotto Kernhouse PSD Bank looks like a done deal that will officially be announced later on this week. No news on what Steve Cummings is doing next, incidentally, but it does sound like he's got something lined up. And finally, we learned that Pogačar's latest contract renewal with UAE Team Emirates is worth a staggering €8 million per year, and that there's a €200 million buyout clause if anyone wants to poach him. At least those are the figures published in the Gazzetta last week in Italy. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? €8 million. Works out as €666,000 a month, €154,000 a week, €22,000 a day, or just under €1,000 an hour. And it is a lot, obviously. It must be quite nice to hear the thud of €250,000 hitting your bank account each month, but when compared to other sports, Pogačar's pay is not quite as impressive, which I think shows that pro cycling is still relatively niche. For example, have you ever heard of Abdoulaye Doucouré? I haven't personally, but that's because I'm not really into football. Anyway, he plays for Everton here in the UK, and his reported weekly wage is about the same as Pogačar's. I was looking at an article this morning that had the rough salaries of the top Premiership players, and there are around 100 of them who are being paid as much or more than Pogačar. And that's just one league of a single sport. One of the bigger leagues, admittedly, but there will be plenty more players in different leagues earning similar amounts. The best paid footballer in the world remains Cristiano Ronaldo, who's reported to earn $200 million a year, not including personal endorsements, which, if correct, means that Ronaldo earns in an hour what Pogačar will be earning in a day. And looking at the Forbes list for best paid sports people for 2024, the 50th highest paid is Devin Booker, a basketball player who earns over 4 times as much as Pogačar. So his contract is definitely the biggest we've ever seen in cycling, but as if we needed proof, it goes to show how far we are from being one of the top sports in the world. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Maybe you think it's a good thing there isn't more money in cycling, or maybe you've got some of your own ideas on how to make it more lucrative. Let me know in the comments section below. Back to Sir Mark Cavendish then. Whilst I won't dwell too long on the exhibition race in Singapore yesterday, I will dwell on the incredible career he's had over the last 18 years. Cavendish turned pro with T-Mobile in 2007. In fact, I distinctly remember chatting to him on the start line of Le Samin early March that year. He hadn't won a race by that point, but he had 6 weeks later, at the Sprinters World Championships no less, winning Scheldeprijs in front of his childhood hero Robbie McEwen. The rest, as they say, is history. Over those 18 years, he's won a total of 165 races, including the World Championships, a monument in Milan-San Remo, 35 stages of the Tour, 17 of the Giro, and 3 of the Vuelta. He also won the Green Jersey twice and won 4 stage races overall. The ZLM Tour in 2012, Tour of Qatar in 13 and 16, and the Dubai Tour in 14. However you look at it, he is and always will be a legend of the sport. Almost undoubtedly the greatest sprinter we've ever seen. And I think what's most impressive is the length of time he's been winning for. You look at the names he was beating back in 2007 and the names he beat at this year's Tour, and that's a couple of generations of separation. It's also his ability to come back from the brink that's been so impressive. Many a time he's been written off, more than once in his career, for good reason. He had periods that suggested he'd never get back to the top of the game, but every time he has. I don't know how, but he has. He just has that immense desire to win, and it's very rare that someone retains that level of desire and motivation for so long in a sport so hard. So huge congratulations to Mark Cavendish, and I hope he gets to relax and recover for a while before he dives into whatever is next. Incidentally, back in July, after his record-breaking stage win at the Tour, I took a detailed look at the career of Mark Cavendish. So if you're interested in watching that, we'll leave a link in the description below. Cyclocross now, and I've only got one big race to report on from the weekend because the Super Prestige in Neal is on later on today. Speaking of which, a reminder, you can catch a full season of bike racing live and on demand on Discovery Plus or Max. So I'll focus on the X2O from Lokeren. In the men's, newly crowned European champion Thibaut Nace was fairly dominant. Elisabeth had set the early pace, but Nace accelerated on the second lap and immediately got a gap. Elisabeth would eventually latch back on, and as he did so, they must have slowed slightly because there was a group of 6 still together after 4 laps. Elisabeth succumbed to a crash and subsequent mechanical, whilst up front, Nace countered the move from Laurens Sweeck. Nace's lead over the rest was 18 seconds with 1 lap to go, and so he was able to sit up in the closing stages. Van der Putte and Michels finished 2nd and 3rd respectively. In the women's, Lucinda Brand moved herself into the X2O series lead. She hit the front on the very first lap, and with Celine Del Carmen Alvarado suffering a mechanical, Brandt took full advantage. Wurst and Casasola were still with her in the early stages, but by lap 3, she'd built up a buffer over everyone else. Alvarado recovered well enough to take 2nd on the day, with another strong showing from Casasola netting her 3rd. The X2O series will continue on Hammer this coming Sunday. Right, I'll finish as ever with a wrap up of the latest transfer and other news in the sport, and the biggest surprise last week was that Cédrine Cabal is leaving Sarah Tizet. Most of you will remember her exploits at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this year, where she showcased her incredible descending skills and power to become the first French woman to win a stage of the race. Now, she had an ongoing contract with Sarah Tizet, but due to the fact that there was a problem with their initial World Tour licence application a few weeks back, UCI rules allowed Cabal to sign with another team. That's a rule in place to prevent riders getting stuck on a sinking ship effectively. That doesn't appear to be the case with Sarah Tizet, but it has been in the past with teams such as B&B Hotels. Anyway, slightly ironic that the team she's chosen to sign for aren't World Tour. She's off to EF Oatly Cannondale on what is a 2-year contract. Cofidis have signed Jan Maas and Paul Ursulin from Jayco and Total Energies respectively. That completes their 2025 roster, whilst Madis Michels is moving to EF from Intermarché. EF have also signed Vincenzo Albanese, who's another rider that's jumped ship from Arkea B&B Hotels, as well as extending the contract of Rui Costa and Michael Falgren. Fernando Gaviria has also extended with Movistar through 2025, but the other big news last week was that mountain bike world champion Alan Hatherley is going to do a dual programme of road and off-road racing from next year. He's joined Jayco Alula on a 2-year deal, whilst he'll still be riding for Giant Factory Racing on his mountain bike. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Plenty of mountain bikers have made the transition in the past. Some have been exceptionally good road riders, others have been pretty much anonymous. Moving on, Laurens ten Dam will become the new Dutch elite women's coach on the 1st of January, taking over from Louis Groeneweg, who's retiring. Ten Dam has been a bit of a stalwart of gravel racing since the end of his professional road career, but recently completed a coaching qualification at the Johan Cruyff Institute. Ten Dam was this year the national coach for gravel, which didn't go too badly, did it? Mathieu van der Poel and Marianne Vos won the event this year. A bit of actual racing news now, as the Tour Down Under has announced its route for next year. Believe it or not, the start of the race is only just over 9 weeks away. So the men's race features a new climb on stage 3 called Knott's Hill, which sounds like a bit of a brute. 2.6k's at 8%, which they'll tackle twice with a technical run into it. Willunga Hill features on the penultimate stage of both the men's and the women's races next year. Right, I'll finish the racing news show this week with some news on a man who came close to winning the Tour Down Under a few years back, Patrick Bevin. The New Zealander's decided to call time on his career, despite still having another year on his contract with DSM. He has suffered with some heart issues in recent years, which you'd imagine is the main reason behind the decision. All the best for whatever is next, Patrick. Right, that's all for this week, but I'll see you again next Monday. Bye for now.